it going in. Void Seeker chases him down and Huni can't get away.
We need to decide how we're gonna play. I feel like we just lost because we played bad.
Xayah misses the cue! Oh no, it's a disaster! Saros with the outplay!
Saros, I give him props for that play. He really outplayed me.
And they find a team fight is the question.
Oh,
The Baron down to one! That's stolen!
As soon as that happened, everyone was just screaming and our voice comes. I almost got the order off.
One more order should be enough, Thirsty, just about able to survive, but here comes the paranoia!
という認識ではなくて、やっぱりその自分たちのその間違い、問題点の方が多いなっていう印象なので、そこをしっかり話し合って改善して、その2日目に挑みたいですね。
Although like people think like sticking to their own like strengths and stuff is good, I still think like if your strengths aren't working, then there's obviously a problem.
I think the most important part is just not lose our mental, because even though we had a poor day one, we can still make it to the knockouts.
I think we have to win at least one game. Perfect world, we win 2 games and we go first split.
For us in EU, we get to practice against the best teams in the world on a daily basis, which just makes us so much better, I think.
I think if we get any kind of draft that is 50-50, we will just stomp that team.
And there come the kills, battling through one by one.
Every team's showing their cards. It's about who can adapt the fastest, and I feel like we're really good at that.
Going in and the perfect position here for DFM!
次もう絶対勝ちます。そんなつもりでいきたいですね。
And where Angelus finds the extra kills in the back end. This could be, and he's so big, so much lifesteal.
We just gotta not lose against ourselves before playing on stage.
I'm not worried at all about not making out of planes. We are definitely the strongest team in all.
And welcome back for Game 1. I'm Daniel Dracos, joined by Joshua Jat Leesman as we get ready for Unicorns of Love versus Clutch Gaming. And Jat, today's where it all really kicks off, because someone's going home sad today. 2 people actually going home very sad. 10 people if you take each individual on the team. It's a lot of sad people today, that's the point. But there's going to be a lot of happy people, too, to balance it out. And these are the games that are going to decide it. And for Clutch, it feels like a chance for a bit of revenge after their day 1.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a total reset for this group with everyone going 1-1 in the first day. And remember, 2 of these teams technically make it to the knockout stages, but it's the #1 seed that is so valuable based on some of the strength discrepancies we see in the other groups, because ultimately you'll have to win the best of 5 to actually make it to the group stage, which is the goal for all of these teams.
And it's interesting, too, because they spent most of their time prepping, of course, for their group stage opponents, and now they have to kind of just guess and look across the table to see who they're going to be going toe-to-toe with. And that's 2 very, very happy unicorns there on the stage. And, of course, it's interesting, too, when you're Clutch Gaming, because I imagine that the in-studio audience is very much in the favor of Unicorns of Love. You know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Unicorns of Love is a brand that's played in this studio for many years, and Clutch Gaming comes in basically what feels like on foreign soil. And they lost to Unicorns of Love on day 1. And I found the video we just saw so interesting, because we got to see yesterday Damonte give an interview after their victory over Mammoth and say, hey, game 1, we didn't have the right draft, we'll adjust, we'll be completely fine. And we also had Saros from DFM, the team that went 0-2, who said, hey, actually, we think most of the mistakes were on our side, and we're going to be able to come back stronger the next day. So in a sense, we've actually seen so little of these groups with them only playing each other once. And we could see totally different looks from every single team today.
I mean, it's 2 games. It's a ridiculously small sample size. And, of course, for Clutch as well, I'm curious to see where they kind of end up in draft here, because you have, Damonte saying, hey, we weren't drafting correctly. You saw game 2, they slowed down a lot in their draft, a lot more scaling options. But you've also got the interview with Huni, who's saying, no, I'm playing at the right pace. the Huni pace is the right pace. Everyone else needs to follow me. So I'm curious if we find a middle ground there, or if this is going to be a Huni pace game, or maybe a bit slower, more controlled game from Clutch Game.
During day 1, I called Huni's pace 85 miles per hour. Also realizing we are on the metric system, as is basically the entire intelligent world, right? It's at 130 kilometers an hour roughly, which is over the speed limit in most places, let me tell you. And that's kind of the way Huni likes to play. But let's get into the Clutch drafting just a little bit, because the first pick Renekton in game 1 was completely outcomped by UOL's multiple ranged routes and also Tristana mid lane matchup. And they also put a high priority on Echo, who, while I still think can have competitive strengths, I thought it was very clear that Lira was not good on that champion, in so much as even trying to do Raptors at half health and level 4 and having to back away because he didn't use his skills in the right order. And so the Skarner, I think, should be a high priority for Clutch. I don't know. It's been about a month since they've actually played on stage. I don't know if they've decided to drop it. But the Clutch that I saw against Mammoth was the Clutch that I saw in the latter half of the summer split regular season in the LCS, where they just picked to outscale. And I actually think that's what Clutch should do here today.
I think safe is definitely the name of the game for both these teams, looking for the easiest win conditions they can. Ease of execution, something we talk about a lot in this tournament. See if the Echo shows its face again. I think the potential is there, but until we see someone prove it, I think everyone has the right to be very skeptical about whether or not the champion can actually be successful in the current meta. But Pantheon, Syndra taken away. The Skarner limited from Lira. Not going to get the chance to play that comfort pick.
Sheepy and I are on the same page, thinking that Skarner is such an important element for what Clutch Gaming has. Keep in mind, the first time these two teams played, Clutch was on blue side, Unicorns was on red side, and also Qiyana was a blue side ban for Clutch Gaming. The fact that that has fallen through, I am not surprised to see Unicorns of Love first pick that, but that also means we're going to see Rakan from Clutch.
And that puts a lot of pressure on Cody Sun and Vulcan, arguably the most powerful bot lane in the current meta. Tons of solid engage potential, one of the strongest AD carries next to Kayle. I believe the most successful AD carry for most picked in terms of win rate outside of Tristana.
Yeah, but also notice the Morgana ban by Clutch Gaming. They dropped the Yuumi ban that they had day one because even though Yumi's been banned a few times, it's fallen through most pick orders, I think, unless a team has a strategy specifically repaired. The Unicorns' bottom lane against the previous Rakan was Heimerdinger Morgana, and that stopped the Rakan from being to all in the Heimerdinger later in lane. I'm very curious to see what Unicorns pairs with it, and it's the Fiddlesticks!
We were talking about a very specific kind of Fiddlesticks, but I'll hold my breath on that one. Some controversial solo queue strats, but overall, very similar effect. You're not going to get the Black Shield, but you are going to get the Fear. You are going to get the Silence. It's going to limit the follow-up here. But still, even with all this magic damage, I still think the Unicorns will have to be very careful on the bottom side of the map against the likes of Xayah Rakan, especially if Lira wants to go for something aggressive like a Lee Sin.
Yeah, they say elephants never forget. Neither do unicorns, apparently, because the Heimerdinger Fiddlesticks lane is actually one of the common pairings back when Heimerdinger bot was a meta pick. It accentuates the poke that Heimerdinger already has, and it also has great reliability for the Heimerdinger stun. Since the Fiddlesticks point-and-click fear, we have very few ranged point-and-click hard CC abilities left in the game. Immediately lines up for Heimerdinger, so it makes the combo have ease of execution, which I think is very important in these types of matches.
And also, just if they ever get ahead, absolutely undiveable when they have set up the turrets, when they are safe. But now we have to see what the responses are going to be. What are the solo lanes going to look like? Where's the Qiyana going to go? Clutch have very clearly set everything up for us, but we are still waiting. Red side had the luxury of that last pick. For now, though, the Aurelia banned away, the Gnar banned away. Some of the safer blind picks limited. But what are Damonte and Huni going to pick up this time around? Is it going to be crazy? Is it going to be wild? Do we see the Tristana again? Do we see the Akali Renekton? I'm wondering how deep into the split pusher pool we'll go, or if we'll see the Orianna once again. Damonte looked fantastic on it.
And that'll show us whether or not Clutch Gaming is deciding to fall back and scale. And the Unicorns, I think, still have actually more flexibility than Clutch Gaming, because while Clutch must lock in their two solo laners, Unicorns of Love may already have one locked in and can then decide what they want to do with the Qiyana, which is, as far as I can tell, more likely to be a jungler in the LEC or even the LCL than it is in the rest of the world. In a lot of places it is consistently a solo lane pick, but I think we've seen enough of it in the jungle to know that it's good.
And I think the one thing that we've seen is that the raw base damage on this champion and the free gank setup with the the water blade hit confirmed just makes her such a threat in the early to mid game. But once again, there's the Tristana. Have to assume that it's going into the hands of Huni. But as I mentioned earlier, very successful pick in the tournament thus far. 5 picks, 80% win rate. Has yet to lose a game in a solo lane. Has only lost one on the bot side. But the Aatrox and Kayle getting picked up by the side of UOL.
So I think this is Kayle mid. Even though the Kayle we saw in the tournament was Evie playing at top for DFM, this is a pick that's getting a lot more popular in solo queue. I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know exactly how these matchups play out, which is why I'm going to be curious to see what Damonte ends up picking into it, since I think that Tristana is going top.
Will it be the Twisted Fate, a Nemesis special here? in the LEC, but not something that I've seen as much. Will lock it in, a lot of global pressure. Can't outmaneuver the Kayle for the vast majority of the early to mid game, but hard to beat Kayle in that scaling battle in terms of impact.
Yeah, Kayle isn't quite as hard scaling as when she was reworked, because she now does get range at level 6 in a bit of cost for a little bit less late game power, but it's still an incredibly hard scaling pick, and Unicorns have one, I would say, weak point in the draft, and I think that's going to be Boss's Aatrox, because I see that as a lane that Huni can absolutely try to bully, and it's something that AHaHaCiK is going to have to play around if he wants to have a front line come later in the game.
Obviously a huge comfort pick for Boss, but a champion that we've seen not be nearly as successful after, you know, kind of the litany of nerfs that have been levied against it over the last few patches. Kayle, something that I'm excited to keep my eyes on, but when you look at early game, Jat, I feel like you have so much setup in the bot lane for the side of Clutch Gaming with Lira on this Lee Sin, but you also have a gold card. We've also seen what an aggressive Tristana can do, and while the Unicorns of Love have a very powerful composition, the lane phase, I feel like they gotta weather the storm.
It's going to be an incredibly interesting lane phase to watch, because if we call our eyes back to 2 days ago, the bottom lane of UOL actually had a mini disaster at level 1. They burned Flash against the incredibly powerful level 1 of Xayah Rakan from Cody Sun and Vulcan, and then were able to recover. Even though that game did run away from them, there were some very close moments in the early game, and we're going to have to see what happens with this new draft.
All eyes on both these lineups. 1-1 across the group. Clutch looking to turn it around, looking to tie up the head-to-head as Unicorns of Love currently own it as we head into our first game of the day. Reminder, this will be a deciding day for these groups. Both these teams, 2 more games, and maybe their last 2 games on the international stage.
There is the Unicorns fan group, ever loyal, Dracos.
It's been a while, man. It's so nostalgic. It warms my heart. But it's interesting. I mean, highlighting the Kayle before we see the jungler start. This is something that Nomanz played a lot before MSI when the champion was first released. It was available in the LCL playoffs. And I'm going to be honest, a lot of his success, to me, came just because he was outclassing his lane opponents. He was winning a lot of trades that I didn't think he should be winning. And I'm curious what it looks like up against Damonte, a guy who, in the right situation, can be very aggressive, can look to make these big plays. But as I say that, both these laners are going Kleptomancy. I think neither of them are really looking for the 1v1, maybe looking to go elsewhere on the map.
Yeah, Kleptomancy is generally good on Kayle because it's easy to proc, and I think, at least for the first 6 levels, it's going to be good on Twisted Fate because oftentimes it's going to be range versus melee for those first 6 levels, and I think Damonte will be able to get a lot of gold. But gold card invade, fairly common. Nice bird level 1. Those things are incredibly hard to engage against. This is actually very dangerous for Clutch if Edward's E cooldown comes back up and Clutch stays here.
Have to see if there's another silence. Happy to have this stealthy money. Get this one out.
They're not conceding fully.
AHaHaCiK has, it looks like.
It's bouncing.
A lot of damage. But this is going to really slow down AHaHaCiK's early pathing.
There we go.
Lira good to have the start, and AHaHaCiK just going to have to accept he's not going to get a leash. He's going to be way behind on the first camp. Lee Sin should accelerate very rapidly ahead of this Qiyana. Good start from Clutch Gaming.
Yeah, and it's definitely a fight that I think UOL could have risked going into, but it is also dangerous to fight against Gold Card and a Rakan. I randomly have a lot of experience recently playing with support Fiddlesticks, so I know that it can be an extremely strong pick.
Oh.
Ooh, as we
Sonic
actually see
Wave
Lira
spotted.
immediately going to try and punish. I think he's going to get this just because
to get the reset.
the lanes are in too volatile of a point early game for the soul laners to actually assist, which makes this a fairly safe invade, especially the pushing power between a Tristana and an Aatrox who has had his wave clear nerfed. So really rough start for AHaHaCiK.
Absolutely brutal. And now Huni's going in for the aggressive play. Here is only level 1. The Qiyana really cannot do anything. Has to opt to start with the W. Picks up an element. Manages to make the retreat, but fantastic use of early lane priority from Clutch Gaming as well as that level 1.
Yeah, I actually think it was a bit of an overplay by Lira there to flash over the wall and hope to assist in a kill since the flash was going to be burned by the Qiyana anyway. But it does still give them control over both buffs. It just doesn't give them quite the experience lead I think they would have been hoping for. And I actually don't know if he can even do this without help. Yeah, because, oh no, Edward took the big one with his... And that hurts even more because you get bonus experience on your first large monster. That's actually how the jungle item gives you level 2. So I actually don't think he's going to get level 2 off of this camp either because Edward stole it with E.
That has to be
one of the worst
for
3.5 minutes we've ever seen from a jungler.
Absolutely most tragic start of all time.
Yeah, and it's not like fully AHaHaCiK's fault.
No, not at all.
It's just what happened in this game.
Well, and I want to give credit to Lira, and I do also, if we're going to give any criticism to UOL, I think you talked about, hey, they can try to stay, they can try to fight for the red buff, or they can leave, and it said it feels like they picked a middle option, which really gave them neither of the things that they wanted, and now here's the concern. Coming back into this rematch chat, we would have pointed out Lira as a weak point. His Echo was a bit of a travesty, to be honest, but now the team supports him on the level 1. He goes in for the aggressive evade, and Lira is taking off in this game.
Yeah, you could tell it was a concerted effort from the entire Clutch Gaming team to not only try and enable Lira, but also disable AHaHaCiK, because he was such a factor in that game 1, and Qiyana is such a Gold Line champion. They're going for this.
Gold card, it's going to be an easy follow-up. AHaHaCiK is still just level 1. If Lira walks in the jungle, he can get another kill, but that's first blood for Clutch Gaming. Easy pickup for Lira.
Early game going so much better for Clutch Gaming, and Lira, this is the best feeling as a jungler when you know the other jungler is too far behind to show his face, because otherwise you would never go for that level of a dive, because the counter gank could be so disastrous. It could turn around for double kill if you're actually diving between 2 mid lane turrets, but they know the Qiyana can't stop it. He's even there, he's close enough, but at level 1 he has no abilities to do so, and the lane that was so heavily in UOL's favor in game 1, which was the mid lane, is now going the way of Clutch.
Just such an easier early game right now for Clutch. 1.3k, 1.2k gold lead at 5 minutes. Massive lead. Lira at level 4 to level 2 of AHaHaCiK. Ketchup XP not going to be enough.
And he can't invade either because he's level 2. So if he gets caught out, he has to go back. And just to get this out of the way, if people are a little confused why we're calling the player whose name is spelled AHaHaCiK,
yeah,
it's because the capital H's are meant to be N's, which is AHaHaCiK, which is pineapple in German. This is as far as I will go in terms of pronouncing names for the players. It would be, Dracos, it would be like if you told me to call you Sifa. I would completely refuse to do that.
Why?
If you spell the Dracos.
It's been
Dracos.
years, Jack. Let the meme die. Oh my god. Okay. That's fine. And look, it's a tough name. It's a tough game for AHaHaCiK. You know? Needs to find a way back, but I don't really see a way out here, Jack, because I look back at this map, I see Damonte probably going to be able to sustain pressure in the mid lane pretty much indefinitely, at least until Kayle hits that level 6, maybe can start to fight back.
Yeah.
Tristana should, at least for a while, be able to continue to outpush the Aatrox. Aatrox with no CDR at this stage of the game. And really the only point where they can keep lane pressure is the Fiddlesticks Heimerdinger lane. But when you don't know where the massively fed or massively ahead Lee Sin jungle is, that just gets very difficult.
Exactly, but I do want to point out something that AHaHaCiK just did, which helps him stay in the game. So the very first camp he cleared was the Krugs. The Krugs, after the first time you kill them, when they respawn, are basically worth 2 camps worth of experience. The first spawn of Krugs is only worth 70% as much. So the fact that that died first lets them respawn faster, which gives him access to that large amount of experience faster. So even though he's still behind, if he gets a kill, he could be back in the game.
Oh, and he is able to steal the
He's only
Raptors.
1 level down now because he cycled his Krugs, the most valuable camp.
And really important to be able to do that, to set up to try to play from behind now. Fog of War being highlighted, both teams willing to contest for this. Stun won't connect on the Vulcan, does hit the slow.
Cody Sun is 6.
Yeah, you cannot.
They could kill Qiyana if they use TF ult, but it would be rather risky.
And I think for now, what we saw 2 kinds of clutch games. We saw the game where they choke you out, they bleed you out, they take small advantages, and they just walk away with the game. And that appears to be what this game is. Now it is a little bit bigger than small advantages, Lira. Want to go into the mid lane, help this push out. Nomanz with no TP means there should be at least 1 tower play, if not more, depending on how clean of a back Damonte wants to try to get here. But this is a dominating early game. 15 CS lead in the mid lane. Almost 2k gold difference between these teams. When you said Clutch Gaming versus UOL, I think this is kind of what LCS fans were hoping it would look like the first time around.
And that's always the hope. I do think that overall, the volatility of play-in stage is currently at about what it usually is. I think people often have a bit of revisionist history when they think about how play-ins have gone, because even last year, we saw Cloud9 taken to 5 games by Gambit in the same LCS versus LCL matchup to actually get into group stage. We saw G2 go 3-1 in groups and have to win a tiebreaker over Supermassive. So the group stage games themselves have been relatively competitive for at least 12 months now, and here comes Fight.
A lot of burst damage. It's Stanley going into the Lira.
dead.
Might just get taken down. Damonte going over the wall with the flash, just responding. They don't kill
okay.
Lira. They have to be careful. The Sonic Wave cooldown. There's no Dragon's Rage. But now,
got the root.
Looking for the root. Does manage to connect it. Nomanz stepping forward. Damonte in trouble. The slow is there. Needs to pick up Rock, and he can look to finish the kill. They're going to try to donate to Nomanz. No, AHaHaCiK going to take it. Big kill coming in for the UOL.
Have to see that one again because it just went horribly wrong for Clutch Gaming. They thought they had the level 6 advantage on jungle, so they should easily be able to win that, but it looked like just either a mistiming of CC or abilities, and this is what UOL could use to get themselves back in the game. They get the plate, Qiyana gets the kill, Qiyana also got to soak experience and is now equal in experience after that disastrous early game. So it starts, blue card, speed up. What happens here? So Lira decides to take it in, but then ends up just kicking AHaHaCiK backwards, and then Damonte jumps over the wall to avoid him. Honestly, if Damonte never ults there and just stuns Qiyana to disengage, Clutch is completely fine. But UOL outplaying this 2v2 and get the kill.
And note that Nomanz doesn't even use ultimate in this exchange either.
Yeah, it wasn't even
that
close.
cooldown. And you just have to feel like the thing about the Twisted Fate and the Tridentity Force build is that you have a lot of good sustained damage, but you definitely miss out on some of the bursts you might get from a more traditional AP Twisted Fate. And it feels like Lira doesn't recognize that the damage burden is on him as the Warrior Enchantment challenging Smite's Lee Sin. Just definitely a big misplay. But you can see the average jungle timing. AHaHaCiK quite far behind, but the level 6 does finally come through. No Warrior Enchantment quite yet, but we've seen Qiyana still be very strong even when put at a deficit.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about when he was level 1, he was level 1 3 minutes and 40 seconds into the game, which is roughly 2 minutes after he should be level 2. So the fact that he's only 1 level behind level 6 means he's actually been playing catch-up fairly efficiently, and he has the extra kill. So good job. He's still behind, but it could have been a lot worse.
Absolutely could. Of course, Clutch Gaming, 10 minutes. It's right on time. Flashing
He's
to
in.
the Fiddlesticks. They know exactly what's going to happen. Boss now going in the middle of the team. The Qiyana ult is massive. Easy pick up on Lira. The smite is gone. Vulcan's next on the list. The Heimerdinger now set up and raining hell. Turrets free firing. And an instant Clutch. A bit too predictable. Following through on the 10-minute meme. And UOL are there to respond.
And UOL was so ready for that Rift Herald. Clutch did not respect the Fiddlesticks Kayle combo. It's so good because you can speed up the Fiddlesticks after he goes in and then essentially give him access to Zhonya's before he should be allowed to with the Kayle ultimate. So look for them to do much more of that in this game.
And Jat, we went from a 2K gold lead for Clutch Gaming to just about dead even. Yes, Clutch have the Infernal Drake, but still, looking back at this play, even in the fog of war, the confidence here from Unicorns of Love is incredible.
Yeah, well, honestly, Clutch Gaming didn't have enough vision to know they were there. There were 2 well-placed controllers for UOL in which to make this attack. And then Edward able to flash in with the kill up. Unless Clutch Gaming actually gets the jump on the Fiddlesticks Kayle, they're going to lose that fight because the damage numbers on Crowstorm are so pushed that just because the champion really doesn't do that much, he just gets a ton of damage.
I like the term pushed. It's just a very, very PR way to say big
numbers, yeah.
Big fat Fiddlesticks damage. And look, this is the thing. We look at the comp, we talked a lot about the composition, the potential for roaming. When you've got the Rakan, when you've got the Twisted Fate, you've got a Tristana on the top side, you got a Lee Sin, tons of mobility early on. Why are you the team trying to take 5v5s? Why? That just doesn't add up to me for Clutch Gaming. Yesterday we saw in their second game, much better team, much better equipped for fighting big team fights. Today, they need to split the map. They can't just 5v5 a Fiddlesticks Kayle Heimerdinger. That's not how the game works.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's a false sense of security after how well the early game went. And then being unable to coordinate on that mid lane dive, I think, set Lira back. And the individuals on the team can't make stuff happen without the jungler intervention. So even though that disastrous early game did happen for UOL, it is absolutely anyone's game at this point.
And AHaHaCiK, once again, I think the big story of this game is the fact that he has been able to catch up, not just with a lot of support from his team, admittedly, but now 1-0-2, has a Warrior Enchant to match. Yes, still very hard to see as Boss, though, potentially in trouble. Good bit of damage now coming out, a lot of healing coming in. Damonte's going to go right in the midst of it. He gets one. The Aatrox is massive. Huni is sticking around, and Boss is going to get knocked back. He's catching out to safety, and here comes the Fiddlesticks to ensure the escape. Boss, that was disgusting.
Boss definitely outplayed Clutch. Lira also outplayed himself. He's just sitting there in a 3v1, letting Aatrox auto-attack him to death. Lira is using his advantage very poorly, and Boss is true to his name so far in this game.
absolutely popping off. We talked about it earlier. Now he's being able to match a little bit of the wave clear. Tristana has the 20% CDR build coming out, and the Aatrox is only going to get scarier from here. And this is a champion that we have not seen be very effective on this most recent patch in this tournament, but Boss definitely proving that notion wrong. Aatrox looking very strong in his hands as the Infernal goes down.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about whether or not Aatrox would come into the meta here, and this, in theory, is a good play for Clutch Gaming. But watch Lira in this fight. Gets hit by Q1, sits there for Q2, is sitting on his ultimate cooldown, by the way. Can kick Boss at any moment away from himself, does not do so, and then they can't even finish the kill because Aatrox self-healed so much because he just ate Lira like a piñata.
Look, it's just... He's just taking the Lee Sin cosplay a little too seriously. You know, he couldn't see the big demon. Like, where is he? What's he doing? Yeah, but I mean, that's crushing for Lira too. He had the perfect start. We have to hope that moving forward into this game, that yes, Lee Sin will start to fall off, but the kick still can be a huge impact, and that some of those mistakes are going to slow down. Good news is, first item starting to come through on the side of Clutch Gaming.
Yeah, and I love this setup by AHaHaCiK down bottom lane. Huni oftentimes looks to push his advantage, but in this one instant is actually backing off. Probably because Aatrox has double buffs. But if he tries to do anything, he will die here.
I think they spotted. They spotted.
They 100% saw it. Yeah.
I was thinking to back off.
Can't go that close to the minions.
And you got it. I love the bait, and this is one of the perks of watching from spectator POV is you see Boss stepping forward like he's going to auto Huni. He's like, hey, buddy. You want to take a very clearly Tristana-favored trade, like trying to bait it in, we, of course, all know Qiyana's just waiting in the bush. Sometimes the acting has to be a bit better, though. Did not work out that time. AHaHaCiK, though, backing is going to be able to grab the Mobies, too, so impact across the map should be felt much more effectively. And now I don't know what to make of this game, Jeff. We look at it, it's 15 minutes in. Gold's basically dead even, Infernal's basically matched. Kayle, as you mentioned earlier, still a big scaling threat, but not nearly as instantly win the game at level 16 as she used to be in the past.
How could you not know how a Kayle Heimerdinger game is going to play out, Dracos? Really? And that's the thing about Worlds, especially Worlds play-in. Like, we haven't seen big pro play in 3 patches. We haven't seen these regions play each other in basically a year. And we've barely ever seen these two teams play each other. So as far as setting expectations, it's just so difficult. What we can do, though, is just try and like hone in on this specific game. And right now, it looks like the solo laners of UOL are playing at an advantage, and Cody Sun's trying to farm up until team fights. So it's actually on UOL to try and make plays, and they're going for it right now on the turret.
They're stepping in, but that's an instant Crow Storm. Hello.
Oh, that is unlucky timing on that pause. Looks like Edward is actually complaining about an issue, which is very interesting since he just ulted in to the turret.
That would be an issue, to be fair.
Yeah. We will definitely get word on what the report is on that one. It's like, I wasn't trying.
I never know how seriously to take pauses, because on the one hand, like, you want to let league officials diagnose it. On the other hand, I just want to be...
I just want to wildly speculate.
Exactly. I want to be like, so I was alting, and then Nomanz said he didn't want to alt me, and now I would like to take that alt back. Can we undo the alt, please?
The memes, like, excuse me, sir, this Aatrox has 2 kills or something like that? Yeah.
Lee Sin wasn't supposed to be there.
No.
It's looking a little grim for our boy Eddie. Let's check in. I can still see items the rest of the game. He does have the stopwatch, so should, in theory, have time to survive, but the Lee Sin is going to kick him. Nomanz does also have ultimate, and as much as I'm joking about not using it, that is 2 seconds of invulnerability. Hopefully he would use it on his teammate.
Yeah. Overall, though, the game is incredibly close. We had just kind of set the stage about who's going to have to make the next plays, and it seems like UOL, in terms of recovering from what happened early game, have been taking all the steps properly, right? Yeah. They have allowed AHaHaCiK the time to get experience up to the point where he can be relevant. They outplayed Clutch in the mid lane 2v2, and then Boss just straight up won a 1v3. That's not like a team player strategy thing. That's just being good at Aatrox.
And I feel like a lot of it goes back. Like, I want to give AHaHaCiK credit for, you know, coming back in terms of jungle experience, but it just feels like Clutch had this big lead. They had pressure in many of their solo lanes, and then they decided to kind of burn all the resources they had accumulated by going to that Herald and taking this big fight. And the Heimerdinger and the Fiddle are still a very big part of the game, and it just doesn't feel like they respected what the composition can do from the UOL. But this is something you mentioned.
Yeah.
Does anyone really know what this composition does? I mean, you can theory craft, yes, stay away from Fiddlesticks, but how many times have you actually played against it? course, though, as the pause is ongoing and league officials are investigating the issue on stage, we're going to head over to the analyst desk to get more information on that first game.
Draft talk a little bit about the very first decisions in this game, because Jat said on broadcast that it was the worst first 3 minutes of a jungler's decision-making and performance ever in the history of the game. That was softer than what my analysts were saying. In fact, the early game felt so shocking that Ender himself came running over to While I've set the scene of the drama, let's go back to the draft. Let's talk about the two team compositions that came out of it and why we are so shocked. Vedius, would you like to start us off?
So, first we have to go back to the first time that these two teams met. And it was that UOL had drafted effectively 3 winning lanes, which means that Clutch had no ability to gain advantages in the early game, and they got outscaled. Right? So we were like, okay, this is clearly something that Clutch will adapt to and change coming into today's game. Then we looked at UOL's draft and we thought, okay, Heimer, Fiddle, sure, that's an easy way to gain some priority bot. That can match, I can see that. But then they lock in Kayle and Aatrox, and we're like, okay, so you've just voluntarily conceded both of your solo lanes. You've made it very difficult for the Qiyana to find a lane to play around. And we expected an invade to happen because it's Lee Sin, Tristana. Like, they have a very strong
and
level
TF
1.
gold card as well.
Yeah, exactly, right?
And TF is like one of the big things that stands out to me, because when I think about that champion, and this wasn't a blind pick, but the ability to just blind pick TF, do whatever the hell you want in the laning phase, and then do whatever the hell you want to do on the map, because your TF later is like a big wild card, and then you're laning into a Kayle, and I'm just like, okay, like he's just free to just take over this game, given what we locked in, and yeah, UOL, this is just kind of wild.
And the reason why Jat was saying what he did was because when you have these solo lanes, the expectation should just be that an invade will happen. It just should, which means that you should be planning around that and you should be looking to compensate for that invade. But he chose to overstay. He chose, like, every decision that he made only made things worse for himself, which means that they weren't prepared. It was like that they weren't expecting this invade at all. And they were like, oh, this is weird. Elise in Twisted Fate, Rakan, Xayah, and Tristana.
And that's the thing, right? Like, it could, like, given the preparation, guarantee you, like, nobody else in the play-in stage knows how to play a Fiddle, like this comp, Fiddle, Heimer in the bottom, like, nobody is doing that. And with preparation, maybe you could defend that invade. Like, you face check a Fiddle E, like, bouncing on everyone.
If you
face check a grenade, or not, like, if you put the turrets down, yes, and they face check, you know they're coming because you have vision.
But Kayle, Qiyana level 1.
Yeah, look, it's not wrong, it's not good, but like UOL, I think, is a weird team, and they would be the ones to like do that in the early game. But instead, like, that is just not what happened.
But so,
and then it's
so
just
we're
like,
obviously we're very passionate, right? We're very heated. This is the biggest possible stage for League of Legends to be played on. Hence the reason we're getting very, very emotionally invested in some of the decision making. I do have an update for you based on the pause. When Edward altered, his game crashed. Unicorns of Love have been offered a chrono break by League officials, and it has been accepted. We are currently working through that process, and it does take some time. So we thank you for your understanding.
He just stood there, and I was like, okay, something clearly went wrong.
So we do understand why. Now, in any professional game, in any professional scrim, whenever you speak to players, backstage especially, that level 1 happens, that invade goes down, everyone takes their headsets off, they throw the keyboards and they go, GG, go next. The game is over, right?
Over.
My very own dear Vedius said the game is over.
I tweeted. I said the game is over. There's no way CG can lose this game.
So what happened next?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what happened. Quick shot.
Somehow.
Oh, so
Ejim, seeing as though he's so flabbergasted, what happened next, my friend?
Well, like, it was just given back to them. The mid 2 versus 2 I was talking about earlier, like, TF gets to do what he wants, and there's that, like, little dance of Damonte going over the wall, and then the jungle, like, flashes back, and they traded places.
So,
and yeah, the gold lead just completely evens out.
Let's also think about, like, what CG want to do with their comp with this kind of a lead, right? So when you're this far ahead and the enemy team doesn't have a jungler, you want to continue the pressure that they did in the early game, stealing away the camps, making it impossible for an AHaHaCiK to do anything. That was correct. But their comp ultimately wants to be playing towards side lanes, whether it be looking for picks, setting up for split push, whatever it is. Grouping and fighting is not what they want to do, especially in the early game, because you want Twisted Fate to get things like the rapid fire cannon, or you want to go for the AP build, whatever you want to do. Like, you want items on your Trist and your TF, and you want to play for side lanes, which means that you should use your gold to be playing for plates. You should be taking advantage of the weak Kayle, the early game weak Aatrox, and take advantage of the fact that your already strong laners have a gold advantage, and you can push this as hard as possible.
And I think to simplify, like, it all comes down to something say, like, they win by default, right?
Yes.
Clutch don't have to do anything. If the game state just continues in what it is, they just play it out, remove volatility, then, like, tracking onwards, it's exactly the way they want to play it out.
The thing is, it was a 2,000 gold lead by, you know, what was it, 8-9 minutes or there or thereabouts. But the thing is, how does Clutch Gaming not do anything when Rift Herald spawns? Right? Muscle memory is a thing. This is a team that is literally world famous for their Rift Herald.
And that's one of the things, right? Like, set plays like a 10-minute Rift Herald. We've seen it in the Mammoth game. Like, it's very expected. UOL know it's going to happen. And that means that Clutch is practiced on it. You should be better in a Rift Herald fight because you've done it countless times in scrims, in practice behind the scenes, but it is very abusable. If you are their opponents, you know exactly what's going to happen. The mid lane 2v2 had already been screwed up by that point, and they got to the fight on even footing. They're tanking Shelly, and they just get whacked in the back of the head.
And let's also think about now what this means for UOL's comp, because when you look at it, it can be difficult to make things happen, but because the cast has already talked about it, you have the Fiddlesticks that you can just speed up, send in, and then the Qiyana follow-up is strong. Aatrox flank is strong. Kayle is only going to get stronger and stronger as the game progresses. So them finding an early game lead was a necessity, but now UOL can just keep forcing objectives, and CG just need to avoid fighting.
Well, I'm very glad you wrapped that up. I am hearing that we are nearing getting the game started. It will resume at 15 minutes and 49 seconds before Edward ulted. Let's jump back into UOL versus Clutch.
Thank you very much. Quick shot. Curious to see if he's going to still channel the ult anyway. I imagine the answer is no. I can't remember the exact setup. Maybe Damonte is just...
How many seconds before did they say they're going to chrono break?
I think it's 5-second chrono break. I think that's the shortest chrono break I've ever
Generally,
heard
the
of.
rules are to try and go into a dead ball state. I feel like this is a very difficult decision to make as a League Ops official as well, because essentially Edward felt like he would have had the jump on to Damonte, but now Damonte will know that that play can be made. So he's completely changing his plan and just showing in lane.
Yeah, interesting to see how it would have worked out. But now back to game. Nomanz onto level 11, so the Kayle continuing to get stronger and stronger. Recurve bow already picked up. Ginsu's, I guess, would be a next item. We've also seen Blade of the Rune King on the top lane Kayle, but now here comes the ultimate Lira. Fear goes in. Lira now in trouble. The stun is not going to connect, though. Vulcan there to save the day and get right back out, but Lira goes in! Lira, what are you doing? That was terrible! Stun goes in. Maybe the follow-up is here. Maybe they can turn this play around, but Edward's running for the hills in a catastrophic play.
Lira is definitely getting punished in this game, Dracos. First off, we know that UOL had topside jungle control because of what happened before the chrono break. So he goes directly back there by himself, gets out, he's safe, he's completely fine, then decides to go back in again. Lira definitely needs to improve his play if Clutch wants to win this game.
Yeah, it feels bad. I don't want to keep harping on Lira, but that was just a very poor decision. And, you know, you always wonder what's going on. You have no idea. Maybe someone else on the team is shouting for him to go in. But when we look at the replay with the Fog of War...
Yeah. There are question marks. He's typically, like right here, he's in a place where he thinks he can get away if he gets jumped on. And he's actually right. The Qiyana ult misses a misplay by AHaHaCiK. But then he goes back in probably because Clutch is saying, like, go, go, go. We have TF ult. It's going to be a 4v3. But he just goes too soon. And that gives the gold lead over to UOL.
And maybe he's still feeling like he's as powerful as he was earlier on in the game, but he is no longer ahead. He is now actually behind AHaHaCiK on the Qiyana. And just a difficult spot to be. But once again, we heard it from the desk. Clutch Gaming maybe needing a little bit more time. They're definitely not out of the game. Twisted Fate close to the rapid fire cannon. They can start to turn things around.
Yeah, and speaking of AHaHaCiK, I said something earlier in the stream which was incorrect. I have someone correcting me on Twitter about the name. I feel like this is the last time I'll have to talk about it. So
you did this to yourself when you
while
tried to...
pineapple means ananas in German, It is called AHaHaCiK. I messed that pronunciation up in Russian. But in the Cyrillic alphabet, the letter H is actually pronounced like the N, which would be why he spells it with H's. Not because it looks like N, but because the H actually sounds like N. If I mess that up, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to talk about this again.
I'm just like, I'm wondering at like what point we decided that we also functioned as like a PBS educational stream. You're like,
I'm down.
Let's learn the Cyrillic alphabet with chat.
Like 1.5 minutes per stream dedicated to just random education. I think that would be fun.
All right, there you go, man. That could be your new branding opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, if people want to
Teacher
tweet me fun facts like that, I will absolutely engage. I'm all down for acquiring knowledge.
There you go. All right, well, there's your Cyrillic alphabet education for all the Clutch fans watching today. For the UOL fans, you might just be wondering what we're talking about, why we're talking about.
It's the jungler's name.
It's all that matters.
Yeah.
But of course, the Ocean Drake going to go down, uncontested as well. And I start to feel bad a little bit for the remaining members of Clutch Gaming, because Huni, despite having a stronger early lane phase, a few catastrophic decisions have cost them. But it is just a trade of towers across the map. Looks like the third one, or the second one rather, very likely to fall for UOL. So they have 4 members set up here on the bottom side. No one responding on the enemy team, but UOL definitely fishing for the setup.
And they just have so much control over this game. The amount of wards they have in Clutch Gaming's blue side jungle, the fact that they, for free, were able to take that Ocean Drake, and the fact that they have mid priority thanks to just constant pushing by Nomanz and rotations towards the mid lane. UOL is actually feeling fairly comfortable right now, but the thing will be their actual way to engage does still need to be surprising. So Clutch needs to kind of double down on trying to get that vision and make sure that Lira and Vulcan having cleanse is actually very important here, because he can potentially face check things and not get CC locked by a Fiddlesticks Q and be able to jump back out.
And you can tell that Clutch are slowing down to play a little bit now that they've left the laning phase, focusing getting that mid priority first, fishing for vision. You saw just a ton of vision placed down on the top side for Clutch. It's now being shifted more towards the bottom side as Vulcan, as you mentioned, moving in, not being afraid to be one to face check. Downside is they don't feel like they can commit a member to the top side, to this Baron. And this top lane push, and Nomanz just continues to get stronger. It is the Ginsus as well as the Nashers. That's a very terrifying Kayle. Not someone that I think Damonte can comfortably 1v1 or even match the wave clear of at this stage of the game.
Yeah, Nomanz in a very powerful position. That's going to kind of give them permanent priority over them. However, if he does do this kind of wait in the brush move too often, and Clutch Gaming does see a window, Damonte would be able to TF ult down. It's just a matter of map pressure right now, which is why Nomanz is staying here, because if Damonte ults down, he loses pressure, and because there's such a small amount of vision on Clutch right now, you can see that's why he has to use that Twisted Fate ultimate.
And the good news is they do have some of those get out of jail free cards. They have the Twisted Fate ultimate. They have, a blue trinket, which is unfortunately down for Cody Sun, but will be up eventually. On the opposite side for UOL, vision control is just going to continue to get more oppressive. They got control wards, they got double sweepers, and once the Duskblade comes in too, they should be able to really just black out the map for the side of Clutch Gaming, and that's when this Fiddlesticks gets terrifying.
Yeah, and Clutch is currently out of vision checking tools. The TF ult is down, and their blue trinkets aren't coming back anytime soon, which means they have to spend all of their map pressure in getting mid priority back right now, which gives UOL time to pressure those side lanes. So in terms of what we call tempo, UOL is very far ahead right now.
And just easy once they get this push started in the mid lane to continue fit. We check in on the gold, though, still relatively even. But we know in the 5v5 team fights, if UOL do get the setup, it's pretty easy for them to execute. You can see the differences in individual lanes starting to shine through. The Xayah pulling ahead, very nice. Cody Sun, of course, on a more traditional multi-item carry, maybe can be the difference maker, but this is going to be a very difficult game for him to navigate when there's just so much latent AoE damage.
Yeah, it's just, let's think about how the team fights need to play out. It's essentially UOL has many divers. They have 2 or 3 divers, and also a Kayle ult. The Cody Sun basically has to wait out, and then he can put his damage down, whereas Clutch Gaming doesn't necessarily have a tank that can withstand that initial onslaught. So I think the way that Clutch Gaming needs to win a fight is if UOL actually goes in with Qiyana Fiddlesticks and then misses. So Lira or Vulcan actually have to dodge an engagement in order for Clutch Gaming to be able to turn, because if any of those engagements land for UOL, they'll kill the front line, then it'll be a 5v3, and then they'll wash Clutch Gaming.
And the thing is, with a scaling advantage like this, you can see Nomanz picking up a QSS as well. So now even the fights that Clutch Gaming might want to pick, if they can find a single target isolated, do get harder, because he's not worried about rushing a third offensive item, can afford to kind of sidetrack his build for some defensive choices here, limit the impact of, a rapid fire cannon gold card in a game like this, but not going to stop Damonte from threatening, moving up, throwing out a bit of the additional vision here. Clutch now once again collapsing on the mid lane. comes the Fiddlesticks ult. His goes right in the middle of the team. Eyes on the Xayah. Can they keep her CC for long enough? The ultimate not going to come out quite yet. Cody Sun pulls it back and they take down Edward. The 1-for-1 trade, however, the shutdown onto Cody Sun.
Yeah, that's actually advantage UOL because he's the main damage dealer for Clutch Gaming that is now down. So even though it looked like that initiation almost missed, it gives UOL the better kill, more gold, and more map pressure.
And Huni has to be careful here. AHaHaCiK does a lot of damage. Even the level of damage for Huni might not be enough. We saw it yesterday. What this Qiyana can get done. Clutch.
Still have Qiyana ult.
I just don't think they realistically can step forward to do this one. And AHaHaCiK going to dash out to safety. We'll tank a couple tower shots and a bomb. A bit risky there from AHaHaCiK, but the tower will go down for Unicorns of Love. And finally, they find themselves with a decent gold lead. Ocean, the next dragon on the table, but Baron feels like it has to be the bigger objective for both these squads.
Absolutely. So 24-minute Ocean Drake actually quite low priority for these teams. Ocean Drake most beneficial in the first 5 minutes of the game, but because they have so much map pressure, they're just going to go this. This is something Clutch Gaming should not contest whatsoever. They should use this opportunity to get as much vision as possible around the Baron pit because UOL is essentially slightly delaying their Baron setup in order to pick up this Ocean.
And this is one of those situations where I feel like they're taking Drake just to get to Elder faster, just to offer another win condition for the team rather than just letting it sit, hoping to get as many stacks as possible. Because the Ocean, not going to matter too much when a team is ahead like this, but good for the Heimer and the Fiddle to have. Keep the pressure up. Clutch, though, grouped is 5. Nomanz has to be
Can't get a
careful.
flank if they want to go. He's got the angle.
Going for the angle. Looks like he's going to find it. That's going to be the double stun. Damonte now running. Vulcan incredibly low, but Huni has the tools to disengage. But that's Edward on the way, and the fear connects. Damonte's going to go down. No, he's running. The flash out to safety. They can't find the kill. CG managed to escape with blinking health bars.
Oh, that was so close to breaking the game wide open. Even though the initiation was disjointed, they still have such an advantage. It just doesn't display in the gold at this moment. Unfortunately, though, because they used the Fiddlesticks flash, they're opting to reset. I wonder if it would have been better for UOL to just continue to clear vision with the control ward from AHaHaCiK since Clutch Gaming was forced into recalls. That could have been an opportunity for Baron, actually, for UOL.
Yeah, and I think a bit hard to take your foot off the gas in that situation for UOL. They've been winning so many of these fights, so if they find a victory there, they instantly take Baron, and it feels like a game-winning play. But bit over-eager, and that means Clutch have a way back into this game, buys them a bit more time where they're not worried about the siege threat or the Baron from the enemy team, a bit more time to get farm into the likes of Huni, who's still on the sideline, has to be careful, and AHaHaCiK and Boss both waiting in the darkness.
Yeah, and ooh, he might get him.
Goes over, grass, no stun.
He knows he's ultless. If he was not ultless, that potentially could have been a dead Huni. So after game 1, when UOL beat Clutch, they were so confident, and Edward tweeted after the game that they actually need to turn up the aggression for the next game because they're not playing as aggressively as they're used to. I think the same thing is actually true in this game where they have the ability to push an advantage and they are being a little hesitant, as in not going for a Baron like that. And it's buying time for Clutch. And while I don't think Clutch 100% outscales just because there's so much CC on the side of UOL, there's always a chance they will win a team fight late game. The fact that there are 3 crit scaling marksmen and no good armor stacking champions on the side of UOL means the later the game gets, the smaller a mistake could lose it for UOL. Here we go, another
big fight, trying to find the stun. That's going to be a 3-man stun. A beautiful ultimate immediately kicking off the Fiddlesticks in the background saying, surprise, surprise, doesn't even need to land
there
the
it is.
damage. The double kill coming in. Boss cleaning house, and Lira running for the hills. That's the fight you were waiting for, Jet. Advantage push for Unicorns of Love.
And it's exactly the setup they wanted. They had control wards in mid-priority, and they catch Clutch as they're going mid lane. Clutch just doesn't have enough speed to run away, and Unicorns finally just take that risk to just run at them, and because of the kills they got, they should be able to secure this Baron.
And they've got a Heimerdinger and a 2-item Kayle. They're going to shred through this Baron. Nomanz isn't even worried about it. It's going to take the time to get a bit more gold on that Scuttle Crab before they move in and knock this one down. 27 minutes in, 3K gold lead. Going to jump up to 4 as UOL grab this Baron. And Cody Sun, all he can do is grab a red. Nothing left for him. Massive advantage for the side of the Unicorns.
Looking so good for Unicorns of Love. Nomanz's Kayle, even after dying to a level 3 turret dive, is just popping off at this stage of the game. Watching this again, Clutch, I think greed for that turret plate, which allows Boss to get an angle that pushes people up towards AHaHaCiK's Qiyana. And then we know the CC chains are just so immense for UOL. Even though Edward doesn't get anywhere with his ultimate, it's enough because Clutch has no front line, and unless the initiation completely misses for UOL, they'll win the fight.
And it's an interesting situation for them to be in now. We've seen a lot of teams draft these compositions with a lot of disengage options and a lot of solid scaling picks, and that feels like where Clutch are, but they just cannot find a fight on their terms. And the disengage options just are not enough against the sheer amount of CC on the side of the Unicorns of Love. The Buster Shot, the Dragon's Rage will not get them out of a disadvantaged fight. Siege, though, now coming in on the top side.
Very interesting, because Huni's down bottom lane trying to take a turret with Demolish, which basically means that Clutch Gaming is conceding at least one turret. The question will be, does UOL have the ability to find a dive into the base? It is more difficult for Qiyana to find the right walls in the base as long as Clutch has vision control in the bottom brush. Also very hard to hold 5v4, and Clutch just back away, and they might die.
Vulcan immediately going to dash out, but Clutch not even going to contest here, giving up this inhibitor. Huni going to try to trade one back. Maybe Clutch just look to stop the recalls here so they can make it an even trade. The Tristana shredding through, but the creep wave just not there to back Huni up at this point in the game.
Yeah, Huni should not be able to get that next turret, so it's 2 turrets and an inhibitor for just a little bit more gold on Huni. And Drake coming up in 20 seconds. I don't know if Clutch could have held 5v5. Probably, but the gold was put onto Huni because really they just need gold in any way possible. Second Infernal should go over to UOL as well.
Just going to continue to stack up that advantage, make Elder that much more lethal. They're doing what he can to grab a bit more farm, get a bit more resources his way before the next fight kicks off, but it's difficult to hold any static objective. You're right that the Qiyana's less effective, but when you're packed under a tower, the Fiddlesticks is more effective, and it just feels like there's not one clean, right answer right now for Clutch. They're going to need to find some very, pardon the pun, but clutch opportunities.
And something that's a very real possibility in this group is a 3-way tie at 2-2. If day 1 ended up playing out the same way as day 2. And just so everyone knows, there are tiebreaker situations in play. If 3 teams have the same record, essentially a 2-game tiebreaker will be played to get the teams out of group. And then it's seeded. And the number 1 seed is the team with the lowest average win time. So ending the game fast could actually be very important, because that means you will kind of be guaranteed the 1 or 2 seed. The second and third fastest average win time will play the first tiebreaker game, and then the winner of that will play the second. So yes, Unicorns is in a good position, and if they win both games today, they don't have to worry about any of that junk because they'll be the only team at 3 wins. But winning quick could be in the back of their minds because it could be important later.
Absolutely could be crucial. Damonte, though, waiting over the wall, hoping to keep this game going, hoping to keep Clutch's hopes alive. Cards will connect, but a healing reduction as well. I like the Executioner's adaptation for the fights to come, especially against the likes of an Aatrox and a Kayle, who now has the Gunblade finish too. Nomanz is massive in this game.
And we saw the analyst test talking about this before the day, or sorry, during the pause, and they said UOL just picked a bunch of losing lanes, and then they had their jungler invaded, but they have actually recovered. It's kind of the opposite of so much of our discussion of saying, or even Damonte's discussion of saying, oh yeah, we're just going to pick scaling because if we're better, we'll win later. Well, UOL, while they pick a little wacky, also pick scaling, saying in a confident way that they think they are better, and based on what's happening in this game, they're proving it.
Yeah, so far. Already own 1 game. Clutch, easy for them to discount that one, say, hey, we weren't playing what we're used to, but this one's going to be a lot more difficult. They had the time, they got to walk away for a day and plan a strategy here, and still, Unicorns of Love outclassing, even despite a pretty disastrous early game. I mean, that said, sometimes it feels like a bit of a meme, but the scaling. Triple carry threat, there's 2 IEs and about to be a 3rd one on the side of Clutch Gaming. All it takes is 1 bad fight for the side of UOL to swing this back in the favor of Clutch, but it does mean the Clutch have to execute, or Unicorns of Love have to make a massive misplay, and it just doesn't look like it's going to happen. Might cost them a bit in game time to not take those big risks, but it should just guarantee a win.
Yeah, I really feel like UOL right now is just in a holding pattern until the next Baron, because when Baron arrives, Clutch will try and run out mid lane to get mid lane priority, which can then help transition them into the river to hopefully contest for Baron. But because of the speed from Kayle and the dashes that the Qiyana can put out, once Clutch shows at the midpoint of the map, if UOL just run the same play they did on their last team fight, I think they just get 2 or 3 kills on a Clutch, take Baron, and end the game. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Clutch approach this, because the standard way didn't work. And the reason it's the standard way is because every other way is worse. So if they try to just get vision through the jungle, that's even more dangerous and even more disastrous against the Qiyana and the Fiddlesticks.
Oh, God.
So it's actually pretty beneficial for Clutch that they're able to get even this amount of vision during UOL's reset, but here is where it gets very difficult.
Absolutely. And insult to injury is the double death caps that have just now been completed by Innaxe and Nomanz.
Yeah. We see your IEs, and we raise you to death caps.
Death caps versus IE, the game. That's what it's all about. And it's interesting because now if you're on the side of Clutch, you're looking at Damonte's ult, and it goes from incredible flank / maneuverability tool to stop one Baron attempt. Same with the blue trinket. Buy yourself another 30 seconds, 45 seconds, maybe.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Damonte, Clutch is prioritizing all the farm on the true marksman, not on the fake marksman in the mid lane. So he's falling really far behind Nomanz because all of his farm is going to Tristana Xayah.
And you can see Clutch, like, they look eager to make a play. They're stepping forward. Vulcan's potentially fishing for something that's be very difficult. Once again, the QSS is there, the stopwatch.
Yeah. So watch this. If Clutch pushes up any further, UOL is going to wrap around behind the back of them. And there's...
And they can go top.
Super minions that they have to back up for. But if they pull too far to the backside, then UOL just bursts Baron. So this is the game they're trying to play. TF ult is now down, and they're out of blue trinkets. So now UOL can basically pull the Baron and just do it if they want to.
And Huni's now back and retreating. Someone needs to clear that top wave, but they'll lose the inhibitor once again. This feels like the perfect opportunity to get Baron kicked off. The Heimer and the Fiddle can look to start it up. Edward instead focusing on that flank, waiting for an opportunity to catch it.
They should just get it. Good setup by UOL. That was very well done.
Clean Baron coming through. Gold lead extended, 4K advantage. And it's a hope and a prayer at this point for Clutch Gaming. Last Baron, Huni was pushing on the side lane, trying to get something back. They gave up an inhibitor tower without really contesting whatsoever, but it feels like they need to fight for this one. If they lose both inhibitors, it just seems too easy for Unicorns to love to end the game.
Yeah, the big thing to watch, though, is the fact that we do have that second Zeal item on Huni and on Cody Sun. So, again, if the first initiation is however stifled by either of the stopwatches of Lira or Vulcan, the two guys that are most likely to be engaged on since they have to be at the front, it doesn't take very long for Clutch to kill the people engaging. That's the one thing that can allow Clutch to come back, because to their credit, they have held the gold lead that we just saw at 4K for about the last 15 minutes. So while they are most likely to lose this game, it is still possible for them to come back.
Gotta hold out hope. Nomanz stepping forward. See how much damage these empowered autos do as he gets the stacks up on the passive. Not too much quite yet. Damonte fishing for that gold card. Just poking someone down even to half to start of this fight could be a huge advantage coming through for Clutch. You have to work through a lot of tools on the enemy team. You got a GA, you got a stopwatch, you got 2 Zhonya's and a QSS, as well as the Kayle ultimate. So it's going to be difficult to burst down some of these targets, but they can just find one.
Cody!
Big stun. Cody Sun's going to be forced back. That's going to mean an easy second inhibitor for the side of Unicorns of Love. One mistake is all it takes. They're going to move up to the top side, retake the top lane inhibitor. Not going to be contested here. Lira still waiting around, hoping to find that kick onto the flank, but it's just not going to happen as Edward is ready at any moment to ult over this wall and stop any potential Clutch engage.
Yeah, and if Lira ever tries to go in for an insect kick backwards, it's going to fail, because Edward will just press Q on him and he won't be able to get the kickoff and he will die. So that's one of the reasons Lira is completely sticking back at this moment.
Stun connects, not a lot of damage. Reducing the healing, not going to be important outside of combat. Team just continues to pressure forward, and Unicorns might not even look for the third inhibitor, just crashing these minions in. Bot wave is pushed pretty far out. That is good news for Clutch Gaming.
I think this is actually fairly risky by UOL. I think they're hoping to overpower Clutch, but because of the Tristana Xayah damage, I'm a little skeptical about their ability to break this inner turret. It is possible, but I think UOL will be better served by picking up Cloud and getting the third hit. They're opting to stay, which generally means they're going for Nexus turrets or the win.
56 seconds left on the Baron. Got some cannon creeps here. You got some supers barreling down each lane. Top one's going to crash shortly. Mid is on the way.
It's really difficult to brute force all the way to the Nexus, but here they go.
Pushing in, and we're going to fish for that one. Lira does manage to make it out. They buy a bit more time. Huni's clearing the minions on the top side. Clutch holding on, but Cody Sun taking huge damage. Still has ult, can pull back. Should heal right back up to full. Hasn't burned any major cooldowns quite yet. Lira also doing fine.
They're down 2 ults, but they're sticking around, which means Clutch might actually look to fight.
Full card connects onto Nomanz. Lira still fishing, hovering under the last bastion of hope here for the team tower, but the minion wave is going to crash anyway. 18 seconds left on the Baron. They probably won't have that to push in, but they could still try to fish for the inhibitor. 2 cannons on the way, 10 seconds. Can Clutch survive this Baron? Boss using the ultimate. Damonte using his in response. Perfect vision on the entire team. No surprise flank. Huni doing a lot of damage to Boss. Boss looks like overstaying his welcome, but the QSS forced out from the side of Cody Sun. will now have to come back, and Unicorns of Love feels like fumbling a bit there. Baron buff, too much confidence to end the game.
They're still trying,
TP,
actually.
They want to step forward. It looks like they are going to be able to break it. The stun does connect. Lira needs to find the flank now, or it's all going to be over. Vulcan now is going to try to go in. Boss on the backside. Nomanz untouched. Huge damage from the Kayle, but Clutch Gaming are holding on. No one has gone down yet. Nomanz now stepping forward. Absolutely fearless. They are going to break the inhibitor. The stun goes through, and they are going to take him down. Damonte manages to grab one, but that's the execution. AHaHaCiK next on the list, just going to function as a reset for Huni, but Lira on the side.
Oh, Huni wants this. Got to be careful about the fear.
Holding on, the flash forward, the fear, they're trying to take that. Huni, the ult is there too, the shutdown is there. Unicorns of Love should just be able to move in and end the game. Cody Sun and Vulcan, the bot lane, the last member standing for the side of Clutch Gaming. Is this just the Unicorns' victory, or can we see the moment? Cody Sun still with the flash up and available. Big damage, Vulcan flashing forward, but it does not connect. Now the fear goes in, there's just too much point and click CC. They knock him down, they knock him out. Unicorns of Love once again take down Clutch Gaming here in the 2019 play-in stage. Dominance after a rough game. UOL are out of control.
And the Unicorns come through once again. What a huge win for them right now. This at least guarantees them a tiebreaker to make it out of the group stage, moving to 2 wins. It pushes Clutch to 1 and 2 and makes the possibility of that UOL 1 seed in Group A much more real.
For Unicorns of Love, once again, creativity in the draft. The Heimerdinger returns, the Fiddlesticks comes out, and I think we're going to look back at that early game, and it's going to be such a moment of pride for UOL that they came back in such a disastrous situation. For the side of Clutch, it's a heartbreaker. They had such a good start, but just could not convert it into anything. Threw the lead away, and Unicorns of Love just never let them back into the game.
Yeah, a lot of eyes are going to be pointing towards Lira. I think so much of the regular season, he was able to find success on Skarner and really not on any other champions. I have to credit UOL for recognizing that ban. Even though Skarner wasn't hard carrying games, the difference between Lira on Skarner and every other champion is so huge. Not being able to turn around that early game, and then knowing that Lira won't have that early game impact, to then draft the late game carry Kayle in mid lane, get that 150 CS advantage by late game, having Boss pick the Aatrox, which many people had dropped as a pick, into Tristana, and actually be completely fine. He never fell behind in CS in that lane, nor did he lose his turret. So the solo lane performances by UOL were great in this matchup, and they earned that second win.
Unicorns of Love fans here in the studio. And I got to give credit to Sheepy. He's always been a coach that has valued kind of the individual tendencies of players. Lets you see, comfort picks, something like a Heimerdinger, something like a Kayle coming through for the team. And if anyone's going to be like, hey, we need to ban away someone's comfort, we need to take away something like the Skarner, you have to feel like it might be Sheepy behind the scenes. But a happy day for Unicorns of Love. Playing on the world stage was not enough for Sheepy. He talked about his ambition to get to groups, and this is, well, a very good first step.
Yeah, now their eyes will immediately turn to Mammoth, who they play later on today. In fact, they have 1 game off, then it's time for Mammoth, and that'll be the game that can determine whether or not they are the #1 seed in this group, which, as we know, is just so important in the play-in stage. In the history of the play-in stages, there has only been 1 major region team to not win their group. That was 2017 with HKA. When you consider LCS, LEC, or LPL, LCK teams, that's never happened before. So this is a big failure by Clutch if Unicorns is able to win that game against Mammoth, and now it's out of Clutch's hands to win the group.
Out of hand. They're looking at Mammoth saying, please do it again.
Yeah, and it's UOL's chance to make a statement.
Huge. Because you think about the second seeds, you think about who they could play against. You're looking at the teams that are undefeated so far. You're talking about Danwon and Splice. The EU versus NA matchup. Danwon, yes, some people feel like Splice are playing cleaner League of Legends, but if you tell me Clutch has to play Danwon to make it to the group stage, that is terrifying for any LCS fan, for anyone who wants to see Clutch do more in this tournament.
Yeah, it's real bad for Clutch. This is a disaster, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
There's still hope yet. We have a lot of games left to play. There's still the best of 5. They can still try and come back from it, but they have set up a tall task, and they've really taken a lot of their fate out of their hands. They've given it over to other teams here, but don't want to take away from Unicorns of Love, because the Herculean task it is to come into these play-in stages and match up against the major region teams. You have to have confidence in yourself to prove that you are better than them, and I think that's what UOL did here.
I agree. I mean, I think when we look at it, it's just incredible what they've been able to do, and a lot of the weaknesses that we might have seen domestically have not shown through yet. And overall, it's just something that they have to be proud of. I'm proud of them personally. And let's see what Edward has to say after that win.
Thank you, guys, and thank you, Edward, for joining me. That was an interesting game, if I may say, so let's rewind a bit. We were all confused seeing your draft backstage, so talk me through it, because you didn't have real prio in lane. So what was the plan in the early game for you guys?
When we don't know what we're drafting to, so... I mean, of course, we know what we're drafting, so... They did really good preparation and punished the early game a lot us. They invade, and they invade blue buff, and it was really hard for us to play the game. But we had the plan that we knew we could go through early game and keep playing, because they couldn't really gank bot lane with TF because of our picks, and top lane it was hard too. Even on mid game, or like around 15 minutes, I think Damonte ulted on bot lane and both killed one people and just run.
Yeah.
So I was all prepared, I guess.
Something confusing happened in the early game between you and your jungler, because you want to help, of course. You're Fiddlestick, you want to help. But then you take the Krug, the big Krug. What happened in comms after that?
I told Ananas, if I use E, maybe I steal. He was like, it doesn't matter, just use it. So he was like, okay, no problem.
Well, it ended all right for you guys. Now, something interesting also happened before the game, because I talked to Clutch's coach, and he said that he wasn't expecting anything special from you guys today. So what are you saying to that now?
To be honest, not gonna lie, we played before group draw, we played 2 scrim days. One scrim day was against Clutch, and another scrim day was against Mammoth. And I think they knew some of our picks. Maybe that's why it's not surprising for them. It's surprising for fans, for sure.
All right, now you have to take a revenge on Mammoth, as they beat you during the 1-1. What did you learn from them playing against them 2 days ago, and how do you know that you will win this time?
Against Mammoth last time, we learned that if you don't do proactive plays, they're really good to play like stable. They wouldn't do much mistakes, even though sometimes they do, but it's hard to punish, hard to see to punish. We just need to be proactive and punish them every moment they do.
All right, I wish you good luck on that, and thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Now, I want to take another quick look at this early game here, because it was so different from the first time these two teams faced off. This time, it was Clutch Gaming with all the abilities to make plays in the early game. So they started off strong. They know they have winning solo lanes and a stronger early game matchup, so they're going to sneak in for a little bit of a later invade onto the enemy red buff. You look at the champions that UOL are thrown into the fight. Qiyana absolutely must have level 2 before she goes for any types of these skirmishes, so AHaHaCiK ends up getting forced out of his jungle. But this is where Lira goes on the offensive. As you can see over here on the minimap, he started up that Raptor camp and is like, no, we need to come immediately back over to this blue buff, because what he wants to do is make sure that AHaHaCiK does not get to play the game. And he goes for this invade because he has a pushing top lane, and Huni is able to run on over. Mid lane as well is able to make this rotation, and ultimately AHaHaCiK gets forced out of his jungle yet again. Now, there's a couple things that you must remember when you are playing this type of game, when you're going for heavy denial on the enemy jungle. The first is you need to be able to set a line of scrimmage very easily down the river right here. You must make sure that the enemy jungler isn't able to trade sides of the map with you. And this is why we don't actually end up seeing Lira overstay in that topside jungle. On top of that, you need to know the enemy jungle timer camps, or the timers on those jungle camps, specifically the raptors and the buffs that you are able to steal. So we will see a little bit later on how Lira does that well. But in the meantime, just enjoy Edward stealing away that Krug and making AHaHaCiK feel even worse about this early game. The poor guy is still stuck on level 1, but Lira runs immediately down for this bottom crab. Remember that line of scrimmage? That's what I mean. And then you go for the offense again. You can't actually clear all 4 quadrants of the jungle when you are playing this fast style. Instead, only really go for those enemy camps when they are spawning. He also pulls off a very smart mid lane gank and can get topside for that next Krug. Now, the thing you need to remember is that Lira took the enemy raptors around that 4-minute mark. So 2 minutes and 30 seconds is when they're going to be spawning next. So Lira sets up his pathing so he can make that play one more time. And to add insult to injury, that's around the same time that the red buff is going to be spawning as well. So when Lira comes back onto this map, you will see he does still have a level lead over AHaHaCiK in the jungle and still has those strong solo lanes. So he walks into the enemy jungle here. You see, look at those raptors. Those are ready for the taking. 6 minutes and 40 seconds because he cleared them out 2.5 minutes prior. And with that level lead and the push in mid, AHaHaCiK can really only try to fight over it. Now, AHaHaCiK does end up getting this camp, but you can see the idea here from Lira that he wants to play heavy for the invades. And if you actually look at that bot side jungle, like, he only took the blue buff. The Wolves and Gromp are still up. So that's what I mean by you can't farm all quadrants of your jungle. You have to play fast in the jungle and not waste time clearing away your own stuff. Now, at the 8-minute mark, when Lira goes for this Infernal Drake, you will notice he is level 6 to AHaHaCiK's level 4, and he has a 1k gold lead. It's absolutely insane. Now, the rest of the game was definitely not the same story. Things went very, very wrong for Clutch Gaming, and Unicorns of Love were able to pick up that win. But when we return, Europe Splice aim to secure a spot in the knockout stage as they face off against Detonation Focus Me.
Of course, Clutch Gaming, 10 minutes. It's right on time. Flashing to Fiddlesticks. They know exactly what's going to happen. Boss now going into the middle of the team. The Qiyana ult is massive. Easy pick up on Lira. The smite is gone. Vulcan's next on the list.